Okay, the first tip that I'm going to show you that I do differently on the little animal friends is she has us start with making the head. I don't. I get the legs made and the arms made, and then I go to the body, and then I do the head. But all of that gets attached and stuffed as I'm knitting. My goal is to have as little seams that need to be sewed up. And so for me, knitting in the round is perfect. Some people don't like it. I would prefer to knit in the round than to have seams to sew up. The only time I can't knit in the round is when you're inserting another color into the body, and then you're going to have a seam opening there. And I always have to leave a little bit of a seam opening in the body, of course, enough to stuff the animal with. But the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to start off with a leg, and I'm going to show you how I get to this point right here. Believe it or not, this is the seam at the bottom of the foot that we typically would have to sew up, and I make it so it's cast on and knitted just like you were doing the toe of a sock, so that I have no seam to sew up at the bottom of the foot. And whenever I can do this, and I do the same system with the hands, I change the pattern up. So also when you're knitting in the round, you're never having to purl. So in my book, that's also a good thing. I don't really mind purling, but knitting is just a lot faster. So the other thing I like is using the flexi flips. Some people don't like them. I love them. You could do the same thing with straight needles, but the fact that these are bendable and you're working on something that's just narrow around, I think these are fantastic to work with. So my cast on then for the foot, it tells us we're to cast on 20 stitches, and not quite sure what's happening with those two ends there. So how I cast on is like I was casting on for the toe of a sock. And I put my yarn in between two needle points, hold it together. I put my finger there so that can't fall off, and I just start wrapping a figure 8. And I don't snug it up real tight. You want it to move. You don't want it to be sloppy. But I need a total of 20 stitches. And so I'm going to wrap figure 8 so that there's 10 loops on each side of the needle. And that will be my 20 stitches. And this right in here between the two needles is what would be our stitch that our seam that we were sewing up. So let me count and see how many I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm going to bring it right back up between those two again. So my yarn's on the back side, and I'm ready to knit. I still kind of hold this first stitch down here, that first little loop, so it doesn't come off. And I pull my needle so it's into the cable here. That gives me ease of picking up these stitches and knitting them. So I'm just going to knit across the top 10. And hopefully you're able to view this. And the first row is a little picky. You know, nothing's super tight together yet because these are just figure 8 wrap on these two needles. If I hold that up there, maybe you can kind of see that it's just a figure 8. And I'm knitting the top row, go all the way across here. And make sure that I dropped that one. not a biggie. I was able to pick it right back up. And let's count here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and there's my 10th one. Okay, pull this so I don't lose this little bottom wrap right there. So that's the top 10, one side of the foot. And I'm just going to flip this. I flipped it this way. And now I'm going to knit back. And I want 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I have one extra, which is usually what happens. And it's perfect because I can just drop that first one off. Doesn't hurt a thing. Pull my needle so I'm back here to the cable part, just so it gives me a little more room to get in there on this first row. And now I'm going to knit these 10 stitches that were the other side of the figure 8 wrap. And so in essence, this is the cast on. The pattern says to cast on, and then the next thing it says row 1 is to purl. Well, this is that row. Instead of purling, we're knitting, because knitting in the round like this, we never have to purl. And this is the slowest round that you'll make getting this first cast on. But think of it, you're stitching up the bottom of the foot at the same time, basically. And so there is my row 1. I've cast on and I've done row 1, and instead of a ridge there where the seam would be, it's just like the toe of a sock. And here I've done that with, and I've done row 2, and row 2 is to knit 1, and then you make 1, and then you knit 6. You can read that for yourself. So I just pretend like I'm knitting in I just go around. This is row 1. One full round would be 1 row. And so I just do and count exactly what the rest of the pattern says. It's just that it's not in a long strip. It's now in the round, and you have your seam already put together for the bottom of the foot. So that's what I do. And now I will continue to read the rest of the pattern, but a purl row is now going to always be a knit row. And so everything you're doing is knitting. And so I'm going to finish up this foot, get to the top of the foot so you can see what I do then at the ankle edge where we have that opening. And then I'll come back to the video. Okay, here we are. I have knitted all the way up to and through, actually, row 20. Give you a quick little view here of what the bottom of my foot looks like. I have a marker here to show the beginning of where the beginning of row 1 was. And then I put another little marker when we went to knitting row 9 through 13, so I could count up and see where I was. So what I did at row 20, it normally would have you knit your 11, then work the next rows, but casting them off at the same time. Well, I don't cast them off. I knit the 11 rows. I do exactly what the rest of the row says to do. With the knit 2 together, SSK, and you want to come down to where you're going to have eventually 22 stitches left. Well, here and here are my 11 stitches. These are the stitches right here that would have been cast off, and eventually then a seam be made. Well, instead of doing that seam, I do a 3 needle bind off. And how you do that turn this inside out. You could do a 3 needle bind off without turning it inside out, but you would have a little ridge where you do the 3 needle bind off. And I don't want a ridge. And so I'm going to turn it inside out. Grab my other needle here. And here's where put these needles to the wrong end. Here's where my live yarn is. And I'm going to get my needle points down here. Just ignore these 11. This is what I love about these flexi flips. You just kind of push them out of your way and make them so they're just kind of go away. These are the stitches that I'm going to do the 3 needle bind off with. And you can look up on YouTube how to do 3 needle bind off, or maybe you already know how, but you hold your 2 needles parallel, and I'm going to slip my needle through both stitches on both needles and bring it through just like as in a knit stitch and slip them off. So now I have 1 stitch over here on my right needle. We're going to do that very same thing together. I'm going to knit these next 2 stitches together. It's a little tight, little bit picky. Still a lot better than sewing up a seam, I think. So pull that stitch through. And now we're going to lift this first stitch over the second stitch. And there we've got 1 bind off. So let's do that again. I'm going to do that all the way to the end of the row. Knit the next 2 stitches together. Pull that yarn through. If you don't split it like I just did, would be terrific. Get you a good shot here. It's easy for me to get outside the camera range, and that's not helpful to anybody. And pull or slip that stitch that was on my right needle over this second stitch that I did. Do that again. Knit those 2 stitches together from the 2 needles. Pull it through. Slip off of your left hand needles. This yarn really wants to split, so I have to be kind of careful that I get all the little pieces there. And pass the stitch that was on my right needle over the top. So that's just another bind off. Just a few more stitches. I do this method if I'm sewing shoulder seams together. I do this 3 needle bind off by turning your garment or whatever you do inside out. So now you're working from the back side. You get a smooth finish on the outside. If you don't turn it inside out, you will get a little ridge. It doesn't look bad, but I don't want the ridge. You may choose to leave the ridge on the foot. The beauty about all of this, in my opinion, about these patterns is make them your own. If something's not working for you, figure out a way to accomplish the same thing. There's always more than one way to skin a cat, as I say. And don't be bound by a pattern. It is the suggestion. There's some things that are givens that you can't alter, but often there's another way to accomplish getting something done. Do what's easy for you and what you're content with and can live with. The one thing with the 3 needle bind off, you always need the same number of stitches on each needle. So if you have an extra stitch, you're going to have to, make it go away somehow. So you want to start out though with an even number of stitches on each needle. And in this situation, that's how it is. It comes out to an even number of stitches. And now we're at the last 2 stitches here, and I slipped that needle out of there, and I really shouldn't have let that happen. So I'm going to pick that stitch back up because I need. Okay, we've got this all back on here again, and we have to bind off this last stitch, and it's a little picky, but I think it's worth the end result. So got the last stitch knitted, the last 2 stitches knitted through, and now I'm going to slip my last stitch here on what was on my right needle, pull that through, and we can now turn this inside out. These are still my 11 stitches, and give myself a little loop here because we'll be cutting that and binding it off, but I wanted to turn this back through so you can see how nice that turns out. And there is the foot part of this little critter, a nice tight little bind off. See how smooth it is? I mean, you have a seam there, or you can see it look like a seam, and it just is going to go together nicely. So now we're ready to finish knitting up the leg, but at this point I start stuffing. I stuff this foot pretty well, and then I will continue to knit in the round, go up maybe, I don't know, 1.5 inches or so, do a little more stuffing, and I just continue to knit and stuff till I get the leg the length that I want it to be. And I do not bind off those live stitches at the top of the leg. I'll be coming back and showing you what I do, but I get both legs knitted up and leaving the live stitches on a needle. Do not bind them off because I'm going to actually knit those stitches into the body. I'll start the body, so then I can knit those stitches right into the body, so there's no sewing on of the legs or the arms. So I'll be coming back when I get it to that point. Hope this has been helpful. Here are my legs done. I have them knitted all the way up to the top, and as you can see, I have kept my live stitches onto a stitch holder. And so these are ready and waiting for the body to be done. You can see how nice and smooth the bottom is. I did the 3 needle bind off up here and came up to the live stitches, and now I'm ready to just leave these sit until I get the body done. But these need to be done before you get the body started, because very soon into the body, you know where the purl stitches are on the bottom part of the body, that's where we're going to be knitting these legs right into the body. And then the next thing that I've started is I've gotten 1 arm done. Okay, for doing the hand, an arm, I do not do it at all like the pattern calls for. I start down here at the bottom because I want to end up here with these live stitches right up here. So how I do that is I know ultimately up here I need to have 19 or 20 stitches. I make it even, so I end up with 20 stitches. If you look at row 56 in your pattern for the arm, it says 19 stitches. Well, I make it even and I'm going to do 20, or you could do 18. So I have my 3 stitches cast onto my needle, and I start doing equal increases on each needle. I do an increase, 2 increases with my 3 stitches, so that makes 5 on each needle. And then I'll do a knit row, and then I do another set of increases, and then another knit row until I get up to having an equal number of stitches on my needle, which we're going to make it either 18 or you can go up one and make it 20. And then I just knit straight up. So the only increases are down here. Now, am I doing the little thumb? No, I'm not. Could we? Yes. I have chosen not to. And often what I will do, not always, I'll show you on this little hand right here, I actually embroider on just the suggestion of some fingers. And I think that is adequate. I'll show you this little gal here. This is the little lamb. And I actually knitted socks on. And this is before, this is where I sewed up, and this is where I sewed up. And this is before I developed the system that I'm doing now. Now that foot, I'll show you again, looks nice and smooth on top and smooth on the bottom. I was going to show you over here on my little squirrel, because Mr. Squirrel, he's the first one that I did that has the legs knitted on. And I've got to tell you, this is so great. This is what it looks like, nice and smooth, not thick. So if you can imagine, pick up my legs here again that I just dropped. So this is the back side of the leg here. So I'm going to knit this row on first, come back around, and then the top part of the leg gets knitted on in this second row. And I'll show you that more clearly as we progress on the video. But this here is a great way. Here's the shoulders knitted on, okay, same way. So the arms, that's why I'm leaving live stitches like this on the arm, so they can be knitted in as we come around to that point. Also, I'm going to be showing you the head is knitted on. I do not knit the head separately. I knit it, I start knitting it right here. I stop I think it's 2 rows before one would close up for the neck. And I think that's the way it is on the head too. I start in 2 rows, but I'm going to show you that in more detail here very shortly on the video. But I just wanted to catch you up to show you what the knitted in arm and leg is. So when I stuff, for instance, this arm, it's not stuffed real tight up to the top. I leave a little stuffing out, maybe about a ½ inch down, so that when that's knitted on, it's not too bulky and it just lays real nice into the body. And pretty much the same way with the leg. I leave a little of the stuffing back, and it just lets that leg sit and not be too bulky. You can see here on Mr. Squirrel, I did the cast on closing up the bottom of the foot when I cast it on, but I sewed this up, and I personally like having it this kind of a seam or no seam. Actually, that's with the 3 needle bind off. I like that look even better than this look. So these tips I've developed as I've made now, I think about 11 of the little critters, a few more to do. Some of them I've done twice because I've ended up giving some away already. But we're going to stop this video at this point. I'm going to finish my arm, and as soon as I get ready to start the body, I'm going to come back and show you how I start the body. I knit in the round. This same process can happen if you knit with straight needles or if you knit with circular needles. I just don't like to sew up seams any more than I have to, so I'm doing mine in the round. As you can see, I have attached 1 leg already. I've knitted it right in. Get rid of some of this yarn. I've knitted it right into the body at row 17 on the body. Because I'm knitting in the round, I have no purl rows. But these, I have 11 stitches here and 11 stitches here, so I've divided my leg in half. Make sure you have the front half of the leg, that your division is correct. And so I've just knitted in the back leg 11 stitches to the body, and now I'm ready to add the second leg. So this would have been my purl 10, I think it is. I actually have purled 11. Don't let that confuse you. And then I've gone over my 4 stitches as it says in row 17 of the body, and now I'm ready to attach the next leg. And what we will do is I will be putting these stitches onto a needle and lining them right up with these stitches here on the body, and then I will start knitting them together, and I'll show you how that's going to happen. Okay, the back of the second leg is now knitted on, and I see I slipped some stitches out here. Well, we'll pick those up real quick like. And I want to flip this over so you can see what the back side of where they were knitted on looks like. You can see in between the needles. And I just think it's super tight. It lays in there nice. It lays flat. I don't stuff my legs real tight up at the top, so when now I'm going to knit all the way around, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to do row 17 twice. So I'm going to do exactly what I did the first time. I'm going to do that and catch the top side of this leg, and same over here, and then just keep right on with my pattern until I get up close to the where the arm goes on, which is a couple of rows before we start to decrease at the neck. And I'm going to post this video, and I will be making a second video that's going to show you how I knit in the arms and start the head. I knit the head onto the body. I don't sew it on afterwards. I actually do a stiffening in the neck. I'll show you how I do that, but I'm going to put it in a second video. It'll be the episode right after this one. So watch for that. I hope these have been good, helpful hints, and there's a number of ways. Maybe some of you have great ideas. I'd love to see your posting here on YouTube if you've got some things that you like to do too. But this, I think, is a terrific way to do these legs, especially without having to do any sewing. So check back with me later on the next episode. Thank you for watching.